Paleo knows. He's been there for a long time. Paleo Radio is straight ahead.
Thank you so much, Timbo, for that introduction. You are listening to Paleo Radio. It is right now 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. For all my free trade friends, okay, I've been on both sides of this whole thing for a long time, and I've been writing some blogs that I've kind of kept hidden from a lot of them because I've kind of found myself frustrated with a couple things, and so I want to talk about it. This is what I have to say, okay? As much as I hate to say it and admit it, I really genuinely believe that the influence of special interest groups and all of these lobby firms, I believe that influence is radically disproportionate in light to the number of people that they actually represent. See, Wall Street has way more influence than Main Street. K Street has more power than anybody can imagine. Surely, it's got more power than Middle Class Boulevard. Okay, so the people with money, people with the power, regardless of their numbers, that's who runs the show. But I think this has been really problematic. I don't think this has been advantageous. Regardless of the benefits such enterprises may occasionally benefit us. And I'm not saying here that there are no benefits whatsoever. I'm not saying that. I think that they're short-term, though. I do. I think the benefits are short-term. I think they're short-sighted. But see, this whole conundrum, it's actually very familiar to me. It is. It's a tension that I have had for a long, long time. You know, I've wandered for years now. I think I've been studying politics now and been in the scene for about 10 years. But I wandered for many years on the dividing line between what would be called paleo-libertarianism and paleo-conservatism. In other words, kind of like the dividing line between Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan. You know, whether it was the debate between free trade and tariffs, the debate between open and closed borders, or localism and nationalism. You have populism and then you have the federalists. Capitalism and agrarian. You have all these different, isms and ists and Asians and Aryans and everything else. But I found myself between a rock and a hard place here. Because we have, good arguments all around. I mean, you have heroes and villains in both camps. You have great books. Each one has their evidence that they try to put forward. So why is this? Why do we find ourselves in the situation that we have? And why is it that I find myself frustrated? And I think that a lot of it has to do with my upbringing. I think it has to do with where I lived. I think it has to do with the family values that I cherished in my home. As a middle-class Michigander up here, in the Mitten State, right, I also see things from a middle America perspective. Let's look at one example. Let's take agriculture. On the one hand, we understand that farming tends to work, the farming work, anyways, tends to do well for very few people. Okay? It's not something that's very popular. Let's put it that way. On the other hand, we've seen corporations destroy family farming and jobs that were once offered to those with, to those who had a degree. And these jobs are now being given to people who aren't documented citizens. And I hear all the time people say, well, nobody would take this job. Nobody would want to do that kind of work. And I don't buy that anymore. I simply don't. We know, though, that these people would be willing to take those jobs. We know for a fact. I know these people. And yet, who do they go to? They go to people, right, who have come across our borders illegally and are willing to work for a price that is below what our government mandates American employers to pay employees. So what do we have? We have American citizens who are now on welfare. We have American citizens who don't have a job. I've got neighbors who don't have a job, who would be willing to do that. I have friends who don't have a GED, who would be more than willing to do corn husking and all that stuff, or corn detasseling.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be more than willing to do it. Shoveling dirt doesn't matter.
A job.
A job.
Bills. But a decent pay.
A decent pay.
A decent pay.
But that's just one. That's agriculture, and that's a good one. Okay, and then we have trade, right? As middle class people, we certainly enjoy our Myers and our Walmart, and we like the fact that what we buy doesn't cost us a whole ton of money. Because we've seen our incomes go too far down. We like the idea that we can buy stuff on the cheap. Because if we can buy stuff on the cheap, what ends up happening is we can buy more stuff on the cheap.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Then again, most of us, at least in Michigan here, have our incomes go down because our jobs are being offshored and outsourced.
Yep.
You got NAFTA, you've got CAFTA, you got all these other so-called free trade agreements that have supposedly assured that we would be better and that we would have a better economy. But so far, all it's assured Michigan is that our number one export would be our manufacturing jobs.
Yep.
These things are like ghost towns. I went to these towns, these manufacturing towns. They're like ghost towns. I'm serious. I went to Detroit when I flew out to Washington, D.C. I went to Detroit, right, to the airport there, and we went to go get some food. A friend of mine, I met up with my anti-plague Craig,
Yep.
and I got a story about him later too. But when I went there, I mean, literally, I drove through this part of Detroit, this little suburb there. Beautiful homes, all middle-class looking homes anyways. But every single business in that town was boarded up with wood over the windows. Every single one. No cars in the streets. No anything. And the only things that were open, I wanted to cry. The only things that were open were liquor stores.
Yeah.
If people don't work, they drink.
Yep.
And I said, this is like, I mean, this is bad. This is like what is this? How do you describe what's going on here? But these were supposed to help us. Yeah, I can buy my scissors for 50 cents instead of $1. But then I have to drive through those streets like that once had American workers who made those scissors and who made other things. Not anymore. Well, it's amazing because, yes, you're right. Actually, there was a time when you could have had no experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
You could have been like, the people in the third world that have our jobs right now, who don't have an education, right? And we were doing their jobs over. Oh goodness, I wish I had that book on me. There was a organization that basically projected over the next 10 years what would be the highest jobs in demand in America.
Mm-hmm.
At the top was cashier, waitress, okay, stuff like that. There were 2 jobs that actually had a relatively decent living wage. Everything else, you could work full time and still be borderline on the poverty level in America. It literally, it's a lose-lose. I mean, you're losing money. I mean, people go into mad debt anyways, going to college. So then they go into a job that they can barely even live on, much less pay their debts off.
Yep.
I mean, it's an atrocity, and it's an American tragedy. And I think it's treasonous against our middle class American citizens, our lower class American citizens.